right, and we're back for another episode of the Lakers Fast Break podcast. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here from Lakers Fast Break, Pop Culture Cosmos, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, and Game Source. We truly appreciate everyone out there, all of our shows. And if you can, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Plus, if you can like, share, subscribe, follow, or do anything that you can to support us right here at the Lakers Fast Break, Pop Culture Cosmos, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, Game Source, of course, the awesome folks at LakerHolics.com, where the conversation, I bet, is flowing even right now as we speak. And, of course, our good friends at the Hoop Heads Podcast Network, where there are a ton of great NBA shows that you can go ahead and check out, including ours. And if you do, it is sincerely appreciated. 2 in a row for the team. All right, sounds good. Even with LeBron out of the lineup, I thought he would be in for this game and sitting out tomorrow's game. Well, it looks like he may be sitting out today
both games
and tomorrow. Yes,
yep.
Both games indeed, because of the rollover on the leg by Desmond Bane. But it was a good chance for Russell Westbrook to step up to the plate. And boy, did he ever, with his best game by far, for the Lakers, with 33 points, 8 assists, 10 rebounds. Just a great overall performance for him as he repeatedly did the smart thing and went straight to the hoop time and time again. Anthony Davis, who had a terrific scare about his knee when he went down, trying to rebound a free throw, and he went down hard. It looked like he had hurt his knee. He was clutching at it. We were just everybody in Lakers Nation took a collective breath and held their breath, but he did continue in the game after a few minutes, getting up and going ahead and continuing to play some really solid basketball. The Lakers, after a late third quarter debacle, came back strong in the fourth quarter and came out on top in overtime, 125 to 121. Got a great crew coming up here today. V. Garcia, who is in San Antonio, should have been at the game amongst the 2/3 seemingly of Lakers fans that were there. There weren't many San Antonio fans in San Antonio. That's up on San Antonio, but it looked like Lakers East, Staples Center's East out there for you. But V. Garcia, he is back in the chat room, so hopefully everybody out there will be joining him. Thank you so much for joining us. But here today to talk about the game, some of the things that went right, some of the things that maybe could be worked on, like the defense still is an issue, but there was so much to like about today's game. He's a good man indeed. You got to go ahead and check out what he's doing today, including his awesome articles at LakerHolics.com. V. Garcia, loved hearing everyone crying today on Facebook. He loves it. There you go. But it is LakerTom. And LakerTom, great to have you here. Good game. Everybody has smiles. Nice comeback in the fourth quarter. Kind of still, some issues as far as how they ended each of the quarters, the first, second, and third. They noted that on the TV, and it was very apparent there's some issues there. I know that the bench did not give the lift that I think the Lakers were hoping for. Malik Monk, you can see that the man has no conscience going and taking a very late fourth quarter shot with still 16 seconds left on the clock. He wasn't even hesitating. He was shooting that from out there.
Yeah, that was a beautiful shot to see.
A beautiful shot, but that's the kind of shot that's no. Oh, yes, you made it. Yes. But V. Garcia says Spurs fans are so mad tonight. They can lose every game this year, but will celebrate a win over the Lakers and LeBron like they won the title. Well, they don't get that celebration today. But LakerTom, your thoughts on today's game?
Well, I think we saw in today's game the huge benefit that a team has with 3 superstars. And we saw this all last season, and I kept pointing it out to people. We saw it all last season with the Brooklyn Nets, because time after time they would end up with 2 of their 3 superstars on the court, and they would still eke out wins. And that was a big part of why they were successful. And I've always thought that it's one of the biggest benefits that you get from having 3 superstars. LeBron, not having LeBron is a difficult thing, since the Lakers' record is a negative plus minus when LeBron is not in the game. And so when you figure you have a challenge when you're facing any team in the league, even if they in the bottom 6 as far as the power rankings go, you're playing against basically missing the greatest player in the game today. But I thought I thought you summed it up perfectly, Gerald, in your opening. Westbrook played exactly what we want to do. He was basically a triple-double threat the entire game. He was attacking the basket over and over. That dunk on the last drive that he made, that was just sensational. And he took what started out to be a mediocre game by him where he was shooting 5 for 15 or something like that. And he turned it around to where he was shooting better than 50%. So that was just a terrific outing. Austin Reeves, I thought, played really heady basketball. And Malik Monk, man, I mean, I love a guy who has got no conscience. And
good and the bad with Austin Reeves, though. He did play very solid, shot very well, but he was minus 13 on the plus minus.
Yep.
So that you know that
I thought he played good defense. He was a persistent guy in there, and he got a lot of minutes, and I think he'll continue to get minutes. He's a good fit for this team. But it's great to see Monk come through and play. And it's good for him and Reeves to get minutes while the other guys are injured so that they can hone up their defense, or in Reeves' case, just get some NBA experience. In Monk's case, prove that he's worth being on the floor. It's a challenge. We've got 5 more games in a row now that are basically the Houston Rockets twice and the
OKC
Thunder twice, and then
the Cleveland Cavs, and stuck in there as well.
Stuck in there in the middle of the Cavs. Well, anyway, we should win those games.
Well, don't sleep on the Cavs, because the Cavs, with their all 7-foot lineup, as far as their small forward, power forward, and center, they have had 2 impressive games recently, including a victory at Denver.
Yep. Yeah, no, I saw part of that Denver game, and
don't sleep on them.
But it's Denver just really laid an egg in that game. They just did not play well at all, and you've seen that in a few situations. There have been some erratic play early in the season, it'll all start to blend out, and the teams that are really playing well will continue to play well. And the teams that are illusions and fool's gold at this point in time will start to show that they just don't have the staying power to win consistently as soon as the sample size becomes big enough to look at. The Lakers are lucky that with all of the injuries that they've got, that they've got a weak schedule basically to go against, because they do have challenges. They got a lot of players. I mean, there were several plays tonight. Rondo throwing the ball out of bounds because he wasn't used to where Reeves was coming off a screen. And you've got lots of situations like that repeat themselves. But we also saw, too, that if we have injuries, as long as they're not the type of injuries that knock a guy out for the entire season, but if we have injuries among the superstars, having that third superstar is so important in your ability to still dominate games, because other than the opening few minutes and the closing few minutes of a game, you don't see the 3 superstars play together most of the time it's 2 superstars on the court, 1 superstar, more often just more minutes that way with 1 or 2 on the floor than you get with all 3. So that was a huge benefit, and we saw the benefit of that tonight as the Lakers had 2 superstars score over 30 points. It wasn't LeBron and AD. This time it was Russ and AD, which is fine. As a matter of fact, it's a great development that we can win without LeBron. And I think you're right that it's going to translate into LeBron taking another 3 days off, not playing until Friday, because why would you put him out there Wednesday?
Well, I was thinking, like I said, in the back-to-back, you would rest him tomorrow, but it looks like they're going to try and see if they could, stretch that out as long as they can over the next few games. This could be something where they stretch him out through the entire 5-6 games if the Lakers start to gel. But the thing I wanted to ask you is, okay, Russell Westbrook had a tremendous game today. Okay, and that's something that I want to ask you, is that he had terrible stats leading into this game. It was just absolutely putrid pretty much so far to this season. is he going to be able to try and recapture some of this magic? Tomorrow, I expect he'll be motivated because it's in OKC. I have a real suspicion that he's going to be able to play decently or very well, tomorrow because he'll be motivated because it's OKC. But going forward, when LeBron comes back and you have all three in the lineup, this is something you got to go ahead and do as Frank Vogel. He has to figure out a way to unlock this Russell Westbrook when all three are in the lineup. If you don't have all three in the lineup,
well, the answer to that, frankly, is pretty easy, Gerald. You put another shooter out there in the court. You put Malik Monk out there on the court, instead of DeAndre Jordan, and all of a sudden you'll find your three superstars will play a lot better and we'll have a lot better start to the game. But the rest of the game, just like we were talking a second ago, the rest of the game is not the three superstars. All of those minutes between the first 6 minutes of the first quarter and the last 6 minutes of the second quarter, the first 6 minutes of the third quarter, and the last 6 minutes of the fourth quarter, you're playing with one or two of the superstars on the court. And in fact, half of the time, you really, if you play all three of them at the start of the game and the end of the game and the start of each half, you really have to have two superstars and one superstar split that remaining half of a game, that remaining 24 minutes. So you got a starting rotation, an ending rotation, and then you got a rotation that finishes the first quarter and starts the second quarter, does the same thing in the third and fourth quarters. Those are the rotations that this game like tonight is really important, because we showed that we can win the game without LeBron on the court. And we've not in 2 years in the games that we've done this year, we've never been able to have a positive plus minus or a positive net rating when LeBron is on the bench. And that's 1/3, that's one half of the game, or in the case of LeBron, it's 1/4 of the game you're going to play without him, that we've been losing all of the time. And tonight we figured out how, at least over a 4-quarter period, we didn't win the third quarter, that's for sure. But I thought we won the first and the fourth quarters.
The problem was as far as the end of the three. The end, as both on TV, and you could clearly see the end of the first 3 quarters. For each of those ends of those quarters, the Lakers just turned the gas off and let.
Well, what they did is they turned the ball over and they took bad shot selection,
Yeah, but the same thing was happening again when Russell Westbrook went out of the game with 5 fouls. They had, again, some very unfortunate turnovers, just looked very putrid on offense when he went out of the game and Rondo came in. So I'm thankful that Russell came back in time and they decided to go ahead and stick with him.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that they waited until it was like 1:31 left before Russ came
remember
back
there was two straight possessions where the Lakers looked absolutely awful with him on the bench. So I'm glad that they were finding rhythm for him in there. And the fact is, he needs to go ahead and drive to the basket. He needs to go ahead and cut down and minimize the amount of times he shoots outside. That's what.
And I think he's going to see that. I think he saw that tonight. I think the thing about Russ is that he's a smart guy. He knows how his bread has been buttered in the past, and frankly, it hasn't been by 3-point shooting and jump shots. It's been by his ability to attack the rim relentlessly and wear down the opposing team. Tonight, more opportunities because LeBron wasn't there. Obviously, from the 3-point shooting, we missed LeBron's 5 out of 10 threes every game. So that's something new that we had to live with. And, we played more like the old winning games that we had last year. But we learned something. We learned something tonight, and I think why it's even valuable and why Vogel should tomorrow night make sure that he doesn't play LeBron, just so that we can get more experience.
Oh, yeah, I don't expect LeBron.
We need more experience of winning with AD and Russ, because that's the thing we didn't have the last 2 years when LeBron was on the bench. We had AD alone. We never had that other third superstar who could be the second superstar when LeBron wasn't in the lineup. And now we've got that guy, and I think we saw tonight how effective that can be. The Spurs are, every team we've played so far this year has impressed me, and at various moments has outplayed the Lakers substantially. So there's a lot of good young talent in this league. It's really amazing. And I think that we're nearing one of those pivot points where all of a sudden there'll be a whole bunch of new names that are going to take over for a lot of guys who are getting near the end of their careers. The LeBron era, the ending of the LeBron era is going to be pretty amazing. So hopefully not for another 4 or 5 years.
Well, hopefully. One of the things I did want to ask you, though, is there's still some concerns, obviously, when you have a game like this. And the fact is that periods of time where the Lakers defense just looked very soft. Their transition defense was at times horrible, and they gave up so many fast break points to the Spurs when actually it's supposed to be our transition game that's supposed to be doing the best. Your thoughts on the defensive end? This is something that, again, will be a problem throughout the season. This is something that I think that maybe you could put some Band-Aids on, but really you're not going to be able to get it to the point where it's going to be an upper echelon defensive team. But what can they do as far as on the defensive end to at least slow down some of these teams a little bit more?
Well, we're going to have to get healthy first. It's not going to happen in over the next 4 to 6 weeks, let's say, because our best 2 defenders that we probably could get back, from the injury list aren't going to be back for at least, probably another 2 weeks. I mean, as soon as I could imagine THT coming back might be 3 weeks. And we know Ariza's probably still 5-6 weeks away. So, we're not going to see a dramatic improvement. I think what we can see is a steady improvement as the players get better. And as, the thing about defense is that the kind of defense that Vogel wants to play is on a string defense. And basically it means everybody's got to be rotating in perfect synchronization. And it's like synchronized dancing, you can have 4 people who are doing it perfectly, and that 5th person who just who gets out of sync and is on the wrong beat and sticking their leg out one way and are going in the wrong direction on a certain play will screw it up, especially over 24 seconds of efficient NBA offenses, that are moving the ball and so forth. So, it takes repetition, and unfortunately for most of the NBA season, the repetition you get is in a game. You don't really have that many times where you've got 3 days off so that you can go and have a practice. And so you end up basically having to play yourself into shape if you're out of shape, and you have to develop your chemistry on the court. You can do some of it in practice. It's great, but you're still playing against guys on your own team in practice. It's not the same thing, and it's not for real. Playing in the games is what really counts, and hopefully the team will, as they get more familiar with each other, because there are a lot of new guys. The lineups have been crazy because of the injuries, and at least now Frank doesn't have any choice. He's only got nine or 10 players to play. He can put a couple DNPs on DeAndre's name as far as I'm concerned, and we could be a lot better off going small and giving more minutes to some of our guards, giving more minutes to Malik and so forth. It's going to, as much as I hate to even admit it, I think that Jamie's right. It's going to take a little bit of time for things to get going. And for me, the biggest culprit to the whole thing is the injuries. And the silver lining of the injuries is that it gives at least the guys that we have on the court now who won the last 2 games and maybe got our record up to 500 now. We're 2-2. Those guys are going to be playing probably the next 10 to 15 games. And our record is going to be dependent upon how they play in those 10 to 15 games. And I think it looks pretty good. If we can go through that stretch and get better as a team and have every player get better and develop some chemistry, and integrate more new things in the offense. I mean, they just introduced this LeBron and Russ pick and roll, which is great, except LeBron's out the next 2 games. But it's an interesting to run an inverted pick and roll where you've got the small guy setting a pick for the big guy.
Well, that's something they should have been doing ever since the beginning of the season. Something they should have been doing. Something that,
but like LeBron says, they're only introducing these things little by little because they're trying to get everybody caught up to at least the basics of what Frank wants you to do on offense and defense. You know, we still see situations where guys get caught backdoor and you know, it's frustrating. But there were also, man, I thought we started the game with very excellent defense, man. We were blocking every shot that was put up there. And we really had them befuddled at a point, and we could have taken the game in control at that point in time, but
they went 3 for 17 to start out the game.
Yeah.
The Spurs did. And then, of course, the fourth quarter we closed off.
But they didn't have. But they went 3 for 17 because none of them were good shots. It wasn't that they were bricking wide open threes.
Well, the Spurs are going to have a problem all year, and this is something that we covered with Megan Price, who is a huge Spurs fan. She was on the show a couple weeks back, and something that got a lot of praise as far as the overall show is concerned. And I know I heard a lot of compliments on that show.
I listened to that show. I thought
she was very good on the show, and she did say that offense was going to be a struggle, and it was clear that at times scoring the basketball is going to be an issue for them because they don't have that dynamic score. They don't have that one marquee player that's going to be able to take them to the next level.
Pops doesn't run any plays to get threes.
Yeah, well, that's another thing as well. But once again, it's the Lakers fast break. The Lakers did win, pulled it out in overtime, 125 to 121. Hey, V, be nice to her. She was great on the shows. I got a lot of compliments on her. She is a Spurs fan, but you know what? It is something that
I thought she handled herself better than several of your other guests.
Yeah, well, okay. Does that include you? Need I digress?
No, Megan was very gracious and pleasant person to interview, and
All right, but let's close out the show here because it looks like we're going to go ahead and got OKC coming up tomorrow. But before we head on out, my friend, I do again. The Lakers got to go ahead and take this very well as a win. This is what we need to do to have Westbrook play like this. LakerTom is the GOAT guest, according to V Garcia. So you're the GOAT guest right there for you. But before we head on out, my friend, you got a lot of things that you're going to be writing upcoming for Lakerholics.com. Please be part of the conversation today at Lakerholics.com. So I know you've got a lot of things set up and coming in the future. We saw hopefully an inkling of what you've been talking about in your articles today with Russ and AD playing the way that they did. Your thoughts on what's upcoming at Lakerholics.com.
Well, I'm actually in the middle of an article talking about what I was anticipating going to be a win tonight, and the fact that I wanted to just reemphasize the big benefit of having three superstars is that when somebody gets injured, you really do have the ability to still go in there and dominate games. And it was just so clear last year watching the Brooklyn Nets as Kyrie and KD and Harden, all three of them had various problems during the year that prevented them from playing a substantial portion of games. And they came, and I have no doubt that not playing as many games together and, having so many injuries really probably affected them and prevented them from going as far as they would go if they have a successful season without those injuries. But it has always been, I've been fighting uphill on this third superstar thing for years. And I've heard the arguments that if everybody else has put up, our third superstar is our defense. Our third superstar is the next man up. Our third superstar is the great bench that we've got. Our third superstar is this or that. But as we found out last year, and I think this is a big part of why we went after Russell Westbrook when the opportunity presented itself, is that role players don't become third superstars when the opportunity arises. It only happens very, very rarely. And usually when that happens, it's usually a former star player who's taking another role, and a Carmelo Anthony, if you will. So you can have somebody like that come up there, and Carmelo did that in the last game. But if you really want to win consistently, that third superstar gives you an insurance that makes the floor of how good a team you can be so much higher and elevates the ceiling even higher than that.
Well, the only thing I say in regards to the starting lineup as far as the tweak is concerned, even if we bring out the same lineup tomorrow, is to make you probably a little bit lighten in your day, I would say maybe you should change it up one last time and put Reeves in place of Monk. And the only thing, even after a game like today that Monk played so well at, is the fact that they just didn't have enough spark off the bench on those non-Melo days when Melo is,
right,
as you said, the
but it
one out of four.
to have two gunners off of the bench.
Yeah, on those days when Melo is the 1 out of 4, and those are the other 3
4
that he's
points
not
tonight.
So the only 3 that you're talking about the other 3 games where he's not as effective. You need effective firepower off the bench.
Yeah.
Maybe Monk might have to go back off the bench and come.
Well, I've always felt this is only the second time Monk has started in his career.
Yeah, I know. And he did great, and he did very well. I'm not trying to detract.
And he'd only started 1 game before tonight, which is why I've been hesitant to put Malik in the starting lineup, as well as the fact that he's a better playmaker than I thought he was.
But his defense is still an issue.
But his defense he can't power guys the way that Russ can, and he doesn't fight over screens as well as he could. He's obviously a guy that teams are going to hunt. So, I think once you get down the road, it seems to me like the logical 2 players to play with the big 3 are going to be Ariza and Bazemore. And I think that just makes sense because that's a Frank Vogel lineup. At least then he'll play AD at the 5, and I think that will eventually happen. I think that we aren't going to go through the whole regular season.
I'm not 100% sure because
DeAndre Jordan at center.
We don't know anymore what kind of Ariza you're going to get. Let's just put it out there. Ariza has not been fully healthy for quite some time. He has not been the Trevor Ariza that we are familiar with.
Well, we will either Trevor Ariza will be that person, or you can bet that there will be a trade at midseason.
Well, that's what I was counting on. I mean, that's what if you heard my preview show for the year with Rafael Barlow, that's what I'm counting on for the Lakers is to make that move because I don't think that player.
You know what that'll cost us. You know what that's going to cost us.
Well, THT
and Nunn are the only 2 trading pieces we have, man.
Right now, we haven't seen enough of Nunn yet to make that decision whether or not he could step up like I was hoping. THT, I think, is going to have to be traded at some point in time. I just think I
think so too.
Unless he finds his jump shot, this is going to be an issue with him.
He's like 3 years from now, he's going to be a great player.
But that doesn't help the Lakers right now.
We'll be wishing 3 years from now that we hadn't traded him.
Yes. But we wish right now already that we didn't trade.
We may also have 2 championship trophies to say for the distance.
We already wish right now we didn't let Caruso go. I can tell you that for sure. But it is the Lakers fast break.
Well, it's early in the season too,
It is early in the season.
I mean, I wish my preference last year was Lonzo Ball. I would have hard capped us and gone and got Lonzo Ball.
Lonzo Ball is finally now the player that he was drafted at and what your expectations are. It took several years to write his game.
Apply that lesson to THT.
Well, THT, again.
No, I mean, the simple fact is THT is still 3 years away from being.
Yeah. Or as the old saying goes, 2 years away from being 2 years away. But again, it's been the Lakers fast break. If you have any questions if you have any questions for us, at Lakers Fast Break on Twitter or LakersFastBreak@yahoo.com. He's at LakerTom on Twitter. The only man out there who will go ahead and he's not shouting, but he's all capping at LakerTom on Twitter. And you obviously check out his awesome articles today at Lakerholics.com. And then, of course, the guys there as well. You got Jamie Sweet and Sean Grice interjecting themselves with their great stuff. 5 things from Jamie Sweet. So please be a part of the action today at Lakerholics.com. Well, LakerTom, again, a great victory for the Lakers. It is, once again, the Lakers winning in overtime, 125-121. We will be back tomorrow. It's a back-to-back. They are headed to Oklahoma City to face off against Russell Westbrook's old team. So we'll see. Again, I'm thinking he'll be really motivated, although, again, this is Russell Westbrook. He motivates himself in no time flat. So he'll be motivated, I'm sure, tomorrow.
LeBron won't be playing, so Russ is going to think, man, I'm going to get a lot more shot attempts tonight, so let's go for it.
Yeah, well, let's hope they're all inside.
It'll be a triple-double. It's going to be a triple-double for Russ tomorrow night.
Well, let's hope they're all inside shots and not outside shots. And let's hope the triple doubles
could be a 10-10 turnover triple double.
Yeah, that's just what I was going to say. Let's hope it's not 10
I'm
turnovers.
not predicting exactly how he's going to do it, but he's going to have a triple double tomorrow.
I hope it's not 10 turnovers. But the Lakers are at
Oklahoma City.
Well, yeah. That's not the way you want to get the quadruple, but there you go. But it is the Lakers at Oklahoma City. They're playing at 5 p.m. Pacific, so we will be back after that game to go ahead, be right here for the post-game show. So please join us then. Thank you so much, V, for all your great comments. Great to have you here. I know you're loving this victory. It's oh so sweet for someone who doesn't like the Spurs as much as you do. But again, the Lakers do go ahead and pull it out in overtime, 125 to 121. And we'll be back tomorrow after the game against Oklahoma City right here at the Lakers Fast Break Podcast.